Erin Richards, who stars as Barbara Keane in Gotham, has addressed the possibility of her character eventually becoming Harley Quinn in the Batman prequel series.
You didn't really answer my question.
These videos are not for children. If you are a children, then piss off.
Hey there, I'm Infuso, and you probably know me from my Gotham Joker series. Or more accurately, you probably don't know me at all. But for those of you who do know me, what's up? You come to this channel often?
Now, as promised in my previous Gotham Joker vids, I'm here to discuss Gotham's Harley Quinn. And more so, if Gotham actually really had one. Now, I know what you're thinking. Of course they did. Echo was their pseudo-Harley. She looked the part, she acted the part, she had the same accent, had a similar-ish backstory. But I don't think it's all that cut and dry. As previously established, when Gotham was being made, the showrunners had the rights to certain characters, but they were also explicitly told not to use others. In turn, they basically laughed in Warner Brothers' face and did whatever the hell they wanted to do anyway. So while they never actually technically used characters such as Joker and Harley, they instead used what can best be described as tribute characters. Characters who would serve the same purpose to the series and were essentially, for all intents and purposes, the characters they were told that they were not allowed to use, just sans name. The most obvious of these types of characters were Jerome and Jeremiah Valeska, two brothers both portrayed by Cameron Monaghan, who were obviously meant to be Gotham's interpretation of the Joker. But less obvious is the curious case of Barbara Keane, the wife of Jim Gordon, and the one-day mother of the first Batgirl, Barbara Gordon. And up until the show Gotham, those were pretty much the only things that she was notable for. If there was anything Gotham did right, and actually, come to think of it, there were a lot of things, but if there was one thing that I can single out, it was establishing or building on characters that either didn't get their due elsewhere, or were simply background components to the story. Whether you loved or hated the characterization of Barbara Keane in the show did at least manage to make her a character instead of just the mother or wife of one, which is pretty much what she was in the comic books, and also everything else. I mean, really think about this. What can you tell me about that character based on her time in the Dark Knight trilogy? As a matter of fact, I bet most of you are scratching your heads right now thinking, wait, she was in those movies? Yeah, kinda. A little. Sort of. Now granted, sometimes the character in the show came off as inconsistent, or maybe just lacking a clear direction, but ultimately she did have at least her own personality and character traits. So now let's go over what we know about Gotham's Barbara Keane. Barbara was shown to be bisexual, as she was engaged in romantic and otherwise relationships with both men and women, having been linked both to Jim Gordon and Renee Montoya amongst other names. She was a crazed, mentally unstable, violent, overly jealous psychopath who knew how to use a mallet. And while being a real-life Looney Tune who knew her way around a weapons arsenal, who would also gladly just straight up throw hands, she was also a fairly intelligent and a vulnerable human being. Despite her twisted demeanor, she was depicted as having a surprisingly caring nature to her. She was a redeemable character as she sought redemption for her past ways in later seasons. And her madness was brought on by past trauma at the hands of a manipulative maniac. She'd occasionally don a black and red color scheme, and for a time being even had a working relationship with a smiling psycho. So now I'll ask, is any of this ringing any bells to anybody?
Coincidence? I think not!
I guess the real question here is Barbara Keane a Harley Quinn prototype in the realm of Gotham? And here today to help me answer that question is this cartoon dog.
Hello there, noble degenerates. My name is Channel Pup. I run a channel dedicated to talking about comic book entertainment, pop culture, gaming, and more. But I'm not out to critique everything, I'm here to speak with my heart. And one thing that remains very close to my heart over a year after its ending is the Gotham TV series. So, the question of the day is, does Barbara Keane count as an early Harley Quinn in the Gotham TV series? And I would say, absolutely. I don't know how intentional it is, but Barbara Keane definitely comes across as a different means to the same end scenario, like they do with a number of their more tribute-based characters. You see, Gotham have their clean-cut characters, like Jim Gordon, Bruce Wayne, like there's no argument as to who those guys are, but then there are their tribute characters like Barbara Keane or Jerome Valeska, where the writers maybe wanted to tell a story about a character that wouldn't fit in Gotham's timeline, so they made a brand new character to kind of of tell that story, but in a very reworked, reinterpreted way. And I would absolutely say that Barbara Keane is without a doubt a reinterpretation of Harley Quinn. Because while the details are different, the story is pretty much identical. She's a feisty young woman that we're supposed to care about because Jim Gordon clearly cares about her, who enters a very toxic and abusive relationship with a manipulative mastermind. Except this time, this manipulative mastermind isn't the Joker, but instead the Ogre. Now, the Ogre had every intention of killing Barbara, but instead decided to manipulate her into a love interest for him that he could manipulate and control. Sound kinda familiar, right? He preyed upon her every instability and transformed her into a killer. Not just any killer, but the killer of her own parents. In many ways, this is very much the Joker and Harley Quinn origin story, just with different names and different locations and different circumstance, but the story beats are overall the same and the developments are overall the same. And thus Barbara Keane would also go insane and embrace this new version of herself, much like Harley Quinn did. And to really drive this home, they did team her up with Jerome Valeska, who was the show's tribute to the Joker. And it really helps that for the brief amount of time they shared together on screen, Erin Richards and Cameron Monaghan had great chemistry. In this case though, she wasn't Jerome or the Joker's henchwoman, she was a henchwoman for Theo Galavan. At the same time, so was Jerome Valeska, not to mention there was no kind of romantic interest between Jerome Valeska and Barbara Keane. But I think it was very intentional that they did put these two side by side for the end of Jerome's Gotham Season 2 trilogy. As she kind of grows more stable within her life as a criminal and more independent, Tabitha Galavan becomes Barbara's new love interest. So you've got that whole thing of going from the abusive male relationship over to the homosexual female relationship. And this is where she sort of starts to embrace kind of more of an anti-hero-like identity, which is much more similar to the Harley Quinn of the New 52 era of DC Comics. You've had that progression from doting girlfriend through to victim, through to henchwoman, and now she's kind of much more independent. She's very much more found her match with Tabitha Galavan. She's no longer playing second fiddle to anyone. She's the boss now. She is the head bitch in charge. If you've seen the Harley Quinn TV series, you'll know what I'm getting at there. And then in Gotham Season 4, she forms the Gotham City Sirens, very much taking Harley Quinn's place in that team for the Gotham TV series version. In the New 52 Comics run as well, Harley Quinn has had run-ins with other villains and other characters and unlikely team-ups, and they kind of do this with the whole Demon's Head storyline. Something I'm a little bit critical of, but it does feel like the kind of thing you could imagine Harley Quinn getting herself into. The key difference being that Barbara Keane doesn't quite have that ditzy comedic facade that Harley Quinn does. She also, I mean, this is a reach, but she also wears a lot of red and black. And I do think Erin Richards does prove that she could be a good fit for a Harley Quinn character. Now, the point where she starts to move out of that Harley Quinn mold and become very much more her own character is definitely towards the end of Season 4, for better or for worse. Now, coincidentally at this time, they also started carving out a brand new Joker character. So Barbara Keane, as a surviving part of that former Joker-Harley dynamic we had from Season 1 through to 3, is now forming as something different to make way for a new Joker dynamic, which would also give way to a new Harley Quinn-esque character. I can't say for definite as to whether or not this was intentional. There is still a small chance that this could be coincidence, but I definitely do think there are at least a few deliberate echoes of a Harley Quinn character in Barbara Keane. And I do think this was a very smart way of handling a Harley Quinn-esque storyline without doing Harley Quinn. Their stories follow the same beats, the same structure. It's just very much reworked, and that is very much what Gotham does. I think in many ways, Barbara Keane is to Harley Quinn what Jerome Valeska was to the Joker, where she was kind of a dead ringer, but there were a few clues in there before they pulled the rug under our feet and said, gotcha, can't be her. And I think this is something that isn't commonly talked about when it comes to Gotham. I think people tend to just approach Barbara Keane as a brand new character, which sometimes reminded us of Harley, especially in the early part of Season 2. But I do think there is much more to it than that, which is why I really appreciate you, Infuso, for bringing me on to talk about this. You proposed a very thought-provoking idea for this video, and it's been a blast actually thinking this through and realizing that there were more similarities than I'd initially thought just through, well, thinking about it some more. I'm gonna hand it back over to you now, but thanks again for having me on your show. Take it easy, buddy, and take it easy, fellow Degenerates.
Pup, thank you for the kind words. You are truly my favorite talking canine. Eddie McDowd could bite it. Yeah, I don't really know how many people are gonna get that reference, but there it is. But back to the matter at hand. I too was unaware if the Harley Quinn comparison was entirely coincidental, and for a while I even believed I was alone in thinking that she resembled the Clown Princess of Crime. Until I discovered via YouTube comments and Reddit posts that others have also made the same correlation as well. I've also discovered that allegedly the producers of the show also toyed around with the idea of making her the series Harley, or alternatively the series Magpie. The latter of which I think would have been awesome, and I would have been genuinely interested in seeing. However, ultimately nothing came of it, and instead we got a different Magpie in the show's final season.
In an interview with Cinema Blend, Richard said that there have been conversations about her character becoming Harley Quinn.
I told ya!
Truth be told, I'm kinda relieved that Barbara didn't wind up being the show's answer to Harley Quinn. I enjoyed her far too much as her own thing. To a degree. Around the time she teamed up with Ra's al Ghul, that's where things felt a little too contrived and out of place for me. I was like, I don't know if this is... This just doesn't feel natural. This doesn't feel like anything at all, actually, come to think of it. It's just not... No. I enjoy the Barbara Keane character, and I'm thankful that the show gave her some kind of characterization. They could have very easily made her the non-character that she is in practically everything else. But instead, they at least wrote her to be something. Or more importantly, someone. Maybe I'll go further in depth on Babs Sr. in the future, but I'll end it here for now. Because this video isn't about Barbara Keane, it's about Harley Quinn. Do I think that she was a precursor to Harley Quinn? Absolutely. I would even say in the finale, they kind of hinted at that with that one cheeky line.
But there was another you, I seem to recall. Wasn't there? Then again, there was another me, too.
Proof!
I mean, come on, the writing is on the pad itself here.
I give it to you. You got me there. Right.
I want to thank Channel Pup for coming to the channel. I've been a big fan of his work for a little bit now. As a matter of fact, I only made my own Gotham Joker series where I explored the history of the character and my thoughts on it after watching his Gotham Joker series.
Now, if you guys haven't already, I'm gonna need you to head on over to Channel Pup's channel, Channel Pup, and press that big red subscribe button. And don't forget to let him know who sent you. And if you enjoyed this crossover, well then you're in luck, because Pup will be returning to this channel next month, as we go into part 2 in this 2-part series. With that being said, I want to thank y'all Degenerates for watching once again, and I hope to catch you in the next one.
Oh, give it a rest. I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out. Catch him next time. Same bat time. Same bat channel. It's over.